And thanks very much for coming to the session. We don't have too much time. It's 30 minutes, right? But I'd really like to use the time as profitably and as productively for you. And while I've got a presentation, it's there as a standby, as there as a stopgap, just in case we don't have any questions whatsoever. So I'd much prefer for you to ask the questions that you may have regarding the registration program, what we offer, because I'm sure that the question that you ask will be pertinent and relevant for everyone else in the room. We'll also have Martin, who needs no introduction. Martin is a student at COP doing his registration program, and I think it's also interesting for him to talk about his experiences and the reasons why he chose COP, because you'll be obviously in a very similar position to him or situation that he was in before he made the decision. All right? So let's just open it up, folks. Are there particular questions, things that you'd like to talk about to help to answer?
What is COP?
What is COP? COP is a private college and dedicated to providing practical psychology training, primarily to psychology graduates to get their registration program. The origin of COP, 1993, 3 people got together, a guy called Don McKenzie, who was I think a clin psych, and Scott Rufus, who was head of a consulting company, and another person anyway. And they really lamented the lack of practical skills that university graduates had entering into the field of organisational psychology. So that's how it started. I think they had a couple of interns, and they were primarily geared around providing organisational psychology skills. Over the last 21 years, it's evolved, and we now provide registration programs for interns in Sydney, and now we have a program nationally where we have interns in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, and Melbourne. So our whole focus is to get you to get your registration. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And by the way, Don McKenzie, one of the founders, has just completed his PhD at the tender age, I think, of 86 or 87. Please.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
Could you just give some overview of what would be happening during the internship?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. The internship is 2 years, minimum 2 years, right? Comprising a minimum of 3,080 hours, right? To attain 8 learning competencies or core capabilities through a series of learning activities. I'll go through each one of those briefly, if you don't mind, right? So the core capabilities are these. The 2 that are highlighted are obviously the key ones that you need to work on. That's what psychologists do, right? Intervene, provide intervention, and psychological assessment. Right? The others are important, but they inform that practice. Now, you know that you'll need to sit an exam. The exam covers 2 other domains. Who can guess what the other 2 other domains are, in addition to intervention and assessment? You've got 6 guesses. Ethics, right?
Research.
Thank goodness most people are saying it's not research.
Knowledge.
Communication, absolutely. Right? So the 4 domains that are examined in the Psychology Board of Australia exam are intervention, assessment, communication, and ethics. And what the exam does, it actually looks at your clinical thinking, right? Scenario-based clinical thinking. Okay. So those are the 8 core capabilities, right? Under each of those core capabilities are specific learning outcomes, which you can read and find out from us if you'd like a little more detail, right? But those core capabilities are attained in a minimum of 3,080 hours. In other words, you'll be working for 2 years, and you'll be obtaining those core capabilities through firstly your placement, which is nothing more, nothing less than a job, which meets the requirements of a placement. Now, if you walk away with one thing this afternoon, folks, that one thing should be that if you look for a placement, the employer will see it as being high maintenance. But if you look for a job which meets the requirements of a placement, all of a sudden you're open up with more possibilities, right? So what you're looking for is a job which gives you systematic exposure to the practice of psychology. And that practice in psychology means you've got to be involved in intervention, you've got to be involved in assessment, you've got to have experience across the lifespan, and you've got to have experience cross-culturally. Right? Those are the four broad things that you need to cover. Right? Now, the definition of intervention and assessment is also defined, but I won't go into that in too much detail at this point in time. But you'll be glad to know that most jobs out there, like rehab consultant, counsellor, drug and alcohol counsellor, perhaps even youth work or support work and things like that, could probably meet the minimum requirements of a placement. Okay, so you can start your registration, and AHPRA is happy for you to do that. They will grant you a limitation, a limited placement. In other words, saying that you can actually work in that placement for up to 1,540 hours, generally, which, if you do your arithmetic very quickly, is what? Half of 3,080. So you can generally spend up to 1 year in that placement, as long as in your second year, which can be sequential or concurrent, you can do another placement where the limitation is actually met by the other placement. Right? So you can have people in 2 placements at the same time, or you can work in 1 placement and then move into another placement. So this is the major challenge for most of the interns. And the positive thing is that if you were to join our program, we will actually assist you to find a placement. Right? Most people join us without a job. We will work with you, we'll shove, we'll prod, we'll support, we'll push, we'll do whatever we need to help you across that first hurdle. And the person doing it is herself a psychologist who herself has gone through the registration program. Right? So the best trainer, the best teacher is someone who's gone down exactly the same journey, perhaps a couple of steps ahead. Right? And that's what we do. Okay? So Emily will get you across the line. And most of our interns are in paid placements. 80% is actually conservative. The last count is well over 95% are in paid placements. So, there is a great deal of learning to be had when you're also earning money, rather than just being in a voluntary placement, right? So that's the placement side of it. Can you see that? Yep. So it's a job which meets the requirements for placement. Concurrently with that, you need to work with a supervisor. A supervisor is there who is a psychologist, a senior psychologist, who will mentor, support, guide you, with whom you'll meet every week to debrief cases, to talk about challenges, to help you meet the particular learning requirements. We don't believe that one principal supervisor is enough. Psychology is a very broad field. So what we'll do is we'll give you between 2 to 4 supervisors from disparate, not desperate, from disparate fields, right? To give you an enhanced learning across those fields over the 2 years. And in addition to that, you'll also be supported by a panel of secondary supervisors. And while the board doesn't require it, when I say board, SciBA or AHPRA, we believe that group supervision is critical. It's a different learning dynamic. Right? So you will also have the opportunity to work in small groups where you network, where you do role plays, you do skill practice, you talk to your ethical dilemmas, etc., etc. Right? It's a very rich learning opportunity, and we structure that into our program as well. Right? So far, what you've seen is you're working at a job, generally full time. You meet with a supervisor outside of work, and in addition to that, you attend professional development workshops. Now, I think we should give up the content, should we, Martin?
Sorry?
The content of the workshop.
Yeah.
Right, can you just pass these around? Thank you. You'll be coming along to our workshops on average, every second Thursday evening, as well as on a Saturday. Now, what I'm handing out is the menu of our workshops. It's a menu that you have to have, not one from which you choose. So everything on that menu is something that you'll be taking. Right? Why do we do that? Because those workshops are geared specifically to cover the wide range of competencies that you need to meet that we believe that you need to have met before you're competent as a psychologist. Are there any questions on the content of that program?
This is to become a specifically clinical psychologist?
No, this is to become a registered psychologist, right? But let me just say, as a registered psychologist, you are able to practice clinically. Okay, remember what Karina Berg said, is that the regulation is about managing your title, not your practice. As long as you operate within your sphere of influence and scope of capability, then you're totally fine. So for instance, in my practice, I work alongside a clinical psychologist who refers clients to me. I refer clients to her. I'm supervising a clinical psychologist in Queensland, and I'm just a general garden variety psychologist. Right? Okay. So you can practice clinically using all those competencies as long as you do it ethically.
The competencies that you put up there, is that sort of more online modules that you have to meet, or is it face-to-face work? How does that connect?
No, mainly it's done through the professional development, through your workplace, right, and through a range of activities, which I'll show you in a moment. Okay. Any other questions on the content? What do you feel about that, the content? Are they interesting topics for you? You can see it covers quite a broad range. Okay. So far we've done the easy part. You go to a job, you do your supervision once a week, you come along to a professional development workshop on a Thursday evening process, and probably on about 10 Saturdays a year. In addition to that, in your own time, you've got to engage in a range of evaluation, for one of the term, activities. They include writing up 6 case studies of 2,500 words each. Of those case studies, 3 of them have to be marked by APRA, and Karina Berg is actually one of the markers who will assess your case studies. Right. Now we understand that the pass rate for case studies when they go to APRA is about 70%. Our pass rate so far is about 95%. Now the reason for that really embodies and symbolises what we're on about. And that is, we run a workshop on case studies, you write up your case study, you review it with your supervisor. When she or he is happy with it, it then gets reviewed by 2 independent supervisors who will then provide you feedback. And only when you get it absolutely right according to our standard, we will then submit it. Right? So we maintain a very high standard, but make it a lot easier for you. Yeah? You also need to do things like target problem dilemmas, lit reviews, and so on. But the other big one is psychometric assessments. You need to do 7 assessments, at least 5 times each, on real-life clients in the workplace until you become competent. Right? The 3 big tests are memory, intelligence, and personality, right? So those are the 3 big ones, and the 4 others are of much lesser complexity, equivalent to things like the DAS, the K10, etc. Right? So the 3 big ones and 4 little ones. And when I say do the tests, we're talking about administering, scoring, interpreting, and reporting. Right? So you can see that there's a fair amount of other work that needs to happen to measure and to tick off your competency. Yeah? Does that answer the question again? Yeah. In addition to that, we also have a few assignments, not because we want to make things difficult for you, but we believe that there's some gaps that are best met through self-study. In addition to that, we have something called an in vivo, which a lot of our students are busily preparing for at the moment. What in vivo is that in your 2nd year, towards the end of your registration, we ask you to prepare for 3 typical presenting cases. Work note which client it is. So you'll need to formulate the case for each one of them. And on the appointed day, we'll actually meet in the in vivo situation the client, who happens generally to be a 1st year, and you'll need to actually deliver an intervention session which is appropriate based on the case formulation, and in the debrief you'll need to argue for why you chose with that particular intervention based on the case formulation, and why not something else, right? And deliver that in a seamless fashion. Right? So what we're looking for is for you to develop your confidence in your competence, because in a couple of months' time, you'll be able to hang out your shingle, as an independent practitioner. And we don't want to let you out until we feel that you're confident and competent, right? So you can see that there's a fair amount of work involved. It can be quite complex, but every single intern who's joined us since 1993 and finished our program, guess what? Has gone on to become a psychologist. I know. So we're not looking to change that statistic in a hurry. But it does mean that we do support, push, and make it pretty safe for you to tick off all the boxes. Now, probably at this point, Martin, it's useful to talk about your experience as a student.
All right. Many of you will know me, Dr. Martin Daly, you recognise my face at the very least, from Motivation and Promotion. How many people have done or are doing? Oh, yes. So you all know. So I've taken, technically I'm still employed at UWS, but I've taken 2 years out to get my professional registration. And so I went through a decision-making process as to which of the pathways, as I'm sure most of you are aware. Your 3 primary pathways are clinical, masters or doctorate, 5+1, so extra 5th year at uni, and then 1 year of supervised practice, or 4+2. So once you've got your 4th year, 2 years of supervised practice. When I got my doctorate, I didn't really want to do any more of the research side of things, so the sort of masters and doctorate I wasn't that interested in. I also wasn't sure what area of psychology I wanted to work in. I thought I was heading down purely down the teaching and sort of research path. Decided I wanted to give private practice a try, or give practice a try, but didn't know which area I wanted to work in. So I chose the 4+2 because that would give me the most sort of real world experience, and of all the options is the one that you're working as a psychologist for 2 years. So it gives you the most sort of hands-on experience of any of the registration options. So I chose 4+2. The problem with the 4+2 route, as Lawrence has pointed out, there's a lot that you have to do to meet the board's requirements to actually gain that registration. It's not just the work itself, there's a huge amount of supervision, there's 120 hours of professional development, and there's a lot of assignments. Lawrence just touched on a few of them there. There's a lot of other things, a lot of paperwork you have to do. It's quite involved, the 4+2. I know a number of people who are doing their 4+2 just out on their own, unsupported, and they're all finding it tough. One's basically, if you've got OCD, you might be able to handle it. If you're incredibly organised, very efficient, very self-motivated, you can manage that process, you can manage the time frames, the 6 monthly progress reports and everything, you can manage it all yourself. The people that I know, except for one who's completely on top of it, everybody else is struggling. They don't know all the things they have to do, they're getting behind in their hours and so on. So that's where some kind of support program around the 4+2 is really helpful. There's a number of organisations out in the room out there which are offering the same thing that COP does. I chose COP specifically, I've done my research, looked into it for a number of reasons. Firstly, as Lawrence said, COP provides the support package. They provide all of the supervision, all your professional development, so you just don't need to worry about sourcing a supervisor, sourcing your PD, finding PD events and things. All that's given to you. The workshop program gives you a diploma at the end of it as well, so it's actually packaged into a qualification. And it's all of the support they provide, around all of the paperwork. As Lawrence said, COP acts as intermediate between yourself and the board. They check all your paperwork, they help you fill it in. There's a number of very large forms you have to complete, which for those of you that have done what I'm doing honours are about as bad as completing an ethics form, about the same kind of length. So a lot of paperwork you've got to do, and they make the whole process so much easier. So the main reason I chose them was it just facilitates that whole process. As Lawrence said, because the workshops, all that PD and the supervision can be organised outside of business hours, and because all of that is provided external to the workplace, as he said, it opens up much wider range of opportunities for the kinds of positions that you can try and find. So COP doesn't give you a placement, but it does provide all that support that Lawrence mentioned, helping you find placements, and you can jump between them. And because the workplace doesn't have to be concerned with the fact that you're a 4+2, they don't have to be concerned with your supervision, they don't have to be concerned with providing professional development or anything, there's a much wider range of organisations that will be prepared to take you on, and as Lawrence said, a lot of those can be paid positions. So you're actually working in a job, as long as you're doing things that are psychology related, Lawrence described that, then you can sign off those hours, and you've got your supervision and your professional development that COP provides, that's providing support around that work. So that was the main reason I sort of chose to go with COP. Out of all of the options, and obviously you have to pay for the COP program, but out of all of the options that I went through when I was making this decision last year, because COP provides that surround which enables you to get paid work, if you can get paid work, this is basically the cheapest option for getting your registration out of any of the options. And plus you get a diploma at the end of it. It's a professional organisation. You know, I've been quite impressed with the way that it runs. I'm now doing some work for them as well. Surprise, surprise, around e-learning. At the moment, the workshops are face-to-face. Those face-to-face workshops are a great experience. We've got about 80 interns in total. There's a bit of a community there. You get to meet the interns. As Lawrence said, a lot of the people who, or all of the people who run the workshops, there's different people running the workshops each time. They're all registered psychs, all different levels, areas of expertise. COP's deliberately gone out and said, right, we've got a workshop on drug and alcohol. Let's go out and find someone who's really experienced working in drug and alcohol, and bring them in to teach this workshop. So you get exposure to a wide range of practicing psychologists, and a number of those people you form part of the supervision panel as well. You can jump around supervisors. So as Lawrence said, you get that a very sort of diverse range of experience and exposure, a lot of networking opportunities, both with other interns and with registered psychs as well.